Okay, we're live. And good morning. And it's September 1st. I don't even know where February went, let alone the rest of the year. I can't hardly keep up. But here we are, and time is marching on. And so we're ready for a new unit in our Sunday school. And this one, I think this one will be one that we might sit back and think. We might sit back and reflect a little bit and say, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because the title of it is Living on Purpose. And we all need purpose. We all need to have a purpose for life. We all need to have a purpose for getting up in the morning, for going to bed at night, for doing all the things that we do. And if we can discover that, if we can live on purpose, then we will go a long way. And so today we begin with a lesson entitled Purpose Questioned. You've probably done that before. If you've ever stopped to think about, what does life really mean, you've questioned your purpose because most of us, 200 years from now, they're not going to call our name. Whereas we talk about George Washington often, that this is kind of the way it's going to be. So then how do we know that we really, I use the word mattered, but how do we know that our time here on this earth was spent with purpose, with wise consideration? Well, we have to kind of question that and figure out what we really need to know or who we really are. And so I think that's where we need to be. The world owns a lot of things. The world's had a whole lot of things involved. But here's the deal. Being popular, giving us security of money, happiness, sense of well-being, all those things are good. However, they really don't deliver genuine inner peace. Only knowing the Lord can do that. Only knowing the sovereignty of God can really get us to that place. So we kind of are left with this feeling of futility. I've used this more than once. I owe, so off to work I go. I think I even said that on Wednesday night, maybe when we were leaving here. But it's kind of that way, isn't it? Here we are, and we're just stuck in this vicious cycle of life. And what does it all mean? And so we're going to go to the book of Ecclesiastes, first chapter, and we're going to kind of sit down and figure out how did Solomon see it? Well, I say Solomon. There's been arguments and who knows what. Who was it really wrote this? I believe it was Solomon, even though his name is never mentioned. It was certainly someone who had lots of wisdom. And he talks about being a king. He talks about being one who had all the privileges of life, and he indulged in them. I mean, when you read on through the book of Ecclesiastes, you'll see that Solomon, he just really, 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 he tried everything. And like you and I might think, okay, I'll do that once. No, Solomon, like, he went all out. I mean, everything he did was all out. And so in the process, then he gives us this journal or this teaching of what he discovered and what he found. We're going to look at the beginning of that, just to kind of give us perspective on questioning our purpose. So let's begin there. Let's begin. Ecclesiastes 1, verses 1 through 7 says, the words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. Has to be Solomon, right? Absolutely futile, says the teacher. Absolutely futile. Everything is futile. Boy, he's gloom and doom, isn't he? Verse 3, what does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets. Panting, it hurries back to the place where it rises. Gusting to the south, turning to the north, turning goes the wind. And the wind returns to its cycles. All the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea's never full. And it goes to the place where the streams flow, and they flow again. So Solomon is saying here, there's a lot going on, but what's the purpose of it? And what does it really mean? And if we just look at nature and we look at things, boy, there's a lot of beauty in it. Man, it is pretty intriguing to me to know that things just continue to function. Steve Noyes and I rode up along Highway 7 along the Kansas side along the Missouri River on Friday just for a outing. And my gosh, this time of year in August, the river's bank to bank. And uh, that's just amazing to me. Um, how does it keep refilling itself? How does it keep going? How does it get back up there into Montana where it all starts and then get back down here? I don't know. Other than God does it. And uh, well, we know how he does it. It goes to the ocean, it goes up into clouds, the clouds carry it up there, and then it rains, and here it comes again. Or it goes to the mountains and they snow, and now it melts and comes down, and here it is again. It does that. The wind, with the wind, what does the wind do? Man, about the time I'm out with my leaf blower, or my grass blower, and I'm cleaning up my driveway and the sidewalk, and I think, okay, this is the right direction. I'll blow this way, and I just start doing it, and then the wind comes back, and it's coming from the north again, or it's coming from whatever direction. It's constantly doing that kind of thing. How do you really find it? Well, it does it on its own, doesn't it? It does it through the cycles. Part of it is, we know because we live kind of in this hemisphere, but also we live where we are. As the world turns, so to speak, it almost always comes from the west, for us, or at least storms kind of blow through from the west. Occasionally they'll circle back around and go toward the east, but it's unpredictable. I mean, we really don't know exactly where things are coming from. Solomon said the sun rises, the sun sets, panting. It hurries back to the place where it rises. Yeah, it's always there, isn't it? And even though through the months it may change in the sky because of the axis and the Earth's rotation, it's still there, isn't it? It's still there. Generation goes and a generation comes, but the Earth remains forever, he says in verse 4. So I know I looked at this kind of backward from the bottom up, but then we get to this at the beginning where he says, of course, this is the words of the teacher and son of David, king of Jerusalem. And he says, everything's absolutely futile. In the King James, it uses the term vanity. Vanity of vanity. All is vanity. What does a person gain for everything that you do, all the labors under the sun? And labors under the sun means just, day in, day out under the sun. As the sun goes up, sun goes down, we do a day's work. And what happens? Well, sometimes we just feel like we're burning daylight, don't we? Where is it going? And what's it doing? What's happening? And it's interesting to me. You read all these things, and he talks about the wind. He talks about the streams. He talks about all this stuff, and I couldn't help but think, Solomon had a lot more sense than some of these scientists today. Well, anyway, moving on. What does it all mean? And well, it is futile. It seems to be empty. It seems to have its meaninglessness. And so where do we find purpose? And where do we find the ability to really plug in and say, this is where I want to be? Well, he goes on in the verses following, verses 8 through 10 say, all things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. Can one say about anything, look, this is new? It's already existed in ages before us. Well, we think we might have some new stuff, and we may have new methods. But when you go back and read about, like in Egypt, when Joseph was taken there, and he worked for Egypt, and you think about their way of building and the process by which they built those pyramids, and you think about all that stuff, and some of the unbelievable things they built even centuries before us. The things we build don't match. I mean, so is there really anything new? Well, we might have a new method, we might have a new design, we might have new ways to use manpower, but no, nothing new under the sun. Are we better? Are we new and improved? Can't always say that, can we? Do we think we've made ways in our day especially in the last 100 years, where man is able to do things easier. Oh yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to have lived 100 years ago. I think about my grandparents, and my mom was born in Wyoming, where her parents, my grandparents, homesteaded. They went out in a covered wagon. They did come back on a train, um, but they went out there in a covered wagon. Um, that just blows my mind, to think about that. My grandparents. So, folks, can we say anything is really new? Well, everything that is here, except for what we've left in space, is what's always been here, isn't it? It's all here. The Earth is self-contained, and we we really can't say that anything is new. We've maybe made new ways, but it's not really new. And so it becomes wearisome, doesn't it? Becomes wearisome. I think about when I was a kid growing up, and we had pretty simple, meager tractors. And well, my dad worked a team when he was a boy, um, and so I think about that kind of thing. And then, gosh, we got a really good tractor when I was about a sophomore in high school. I mean, a really good tractor compared to what we had before that. And I don't know if my brothers were envious that I got to farm with better equipment and better stuff, but I think it made life simpler, made life easier in a lot of ways. Yeah, we can say that about stuff, but has it really changed? No. And if we do not understand the meaning of it, where do we find the satisfaction in it? Where do we really find the purpose in that? That's what Solomon is saying here. He talks about hearing, and the hearing is more than just our auditory senses. He talks about how it's not satisfying. He talks about the eyesight. We see it, and we think, my gosh, never heard tell of that. Never saw that before. When I was before I could drive, my dad and I bought a Volkswagen, took the body off of it, cut 2 feet out of the floor pan, and made a dune buggy out of it because my uncle was doing that. Thought that was a cool thing to do, and we made that. Well, we never really finished it. Matter of fact, it was one of the things that was at my parents' and it's at my brother's. And I don't know if Dan's watching this, but Dan, I really got to get that out of your possession. I got to find a place to put it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I didn't want it to just go to salvage because my dad and I did that together. Anyway, but satisfied seeing. Well, my brother Dan and I drove it to my grandparents one day, and my grandpa, who had homesteaded in Wyoming, looked at it, and Dan asked him if he didn't want to go for a ride, and he said, "No, boys," he said, "looks like to me if a feller'd riding that thing, he's a flirting with the Undertaker." So, well, he took one look at it, and he knew that was probably not safe. Yeah, we see things, but it's not satisfying. We know things, we hear things, and we think, well, it can't be right. Is that really true? Never heard such a thing. I mean, that's really where we are, isn't it? Um, no amount of learning or human insight can provide the answers needed to unravel completely the complexities of this life. And we may see something and think, oh, that's really great, but uh, I think I used this in a sermon a couple weeks ago or whatever. My great grandfather rode a horse, and then when the car came along, he was afraid of the car. My grandfather drove the car, but he wasn't riding an airplane. Next, like my dad, flew an airplane some. Um, anyway, and but wouldn't do other things. And then here I am. I'm not afraid of a horse, but I don't know as much about him as my ancestors did. And so things kind of circle around, don't they? That's kind of the complexities of life. Um, what has been done will be. What has been accomplished is in the books. And so, how do we find purpose for the future? How do we keep moving in that direction? Well, Solomon then goes on to say, we look for purpose. We try to figure it out. We're trying to discover what's going on, and we still all we ever find is futility. So he says in verses 11 through 13, He says, there's no remembrance of those who came before and of those who will come after. There will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. I, the teacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to examine and explore through wisdom all that is done under the heaven. God has given me this miserable task to keep them occupied. And I've seen all the things that are done under the sun, and have found everything to be futile, a pursuit of the wind. Folks, that's pretty empty sounding, isn't it? Yeah, it just sounds kind of harsh. John Maxwell, the motivational speaker preacher, he would always say, "Stop taking yourself so seriously. Nobody else does." And that's kind of true in life, isn't it? What will really happen to us? Well, there may be a tombstone, there may be a marker, maybe a place where they lay our body to rest. But from there, where does it go? Maybe we can pass on a little bit of a legacy, but maybe not. So we live for the day, and we try to figure out what is the best we can do in this day. Um, Solomon said, I applied my mind to examine and explore through wisdom all that is done under heaven. And he studied it. I mean, he's saying, I really sought it out. I really searched it. I really tried to know what mattered. And that's what he's going to tell you throughout the book. I'm kind of disappointed that they, in our study here, didn't go to the end where he says, I've discovered it's all vain. So what do? Well, you learn to trust God. You learn to live for him. You learn to do what you know is honoring and pleasing to him. And you hope that you've done what you can. He'll reward it. He will bless you. He will take care of it. Because to me, without that, it's kind of empty. I mean, here we are until we get to the next week. How do we know about purpose? I can see me scratching my head this week if I didn't know the end of the book saying, boy, Solomon said, vanity's vanity. It's futile. What am I going to do? I might not even get up on Tuesday. Well, no, I will. But we need to know that he did come to the right conclusion. He did come back and say, to love the Lord and to honor him and serve him. That's where it really is. That's where the solution really is. So, I hope that's a good start to our unit, that we've looked at Solomon and the one who knew, who would come along and say, life doesn't have a lot if you don't know the Creator. And so that's where we're going to go throughout this unit. Okay. God bless y'all. Have a great week. Bye-bye.